is America.
America!
I do love America.
Be a part of the show at 850-233-9988. The Kramer Show.
You know, it is America, the great. On our worst day, better than any other country in the world on their best day. Absolutely. And I 100% absolutely believe that. And this area, the Panhandle of Florida, an amazing area that doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion. I was driving around yesterday, I was thinking, everybody is still in a pretty decent mood. You know, you go out and you see people that are talking about things otherwise they probably wouldn't have been talking about what they were talking. I mean, everybody's got a story. And everywhere you go, you hear people's story, and they want to hear yours. And I will say, we have our problems. This area has our problems. But the people, the community, the people that live here have come together. And you and us and we all deserve some credit for that. And, we're keeping our head above water. That's just how we are. And one of the things that people are finding out quickly is that in order to get what they deserve from the insurance company quicker, they're having to use someone. And that could be a public adjuster. It could be an attorney. And I'm so proud that over the past 9 months, he has stuck in there. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team, not only... I've seen... Let me tell you something. We've talked to him a million times on the show, and he is right here, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, every single morning he's supposed to be on. He flies here all the time, stays here, talks to people, goes out on his own dime to different areas of the Panhandle to come here and help. The guy really does mean that when he says that he wants to help. Without further ado, I don't want him to sit there on hold any longer. Scott Major, my friend, good morning.
How you doing, pal? I'll send you that check immediately.
Well, look, what I said, I meant, that. And you have helped out.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, you have helped out the people in this area tremendously, and by being on every day and talking about the legalities and the legal process with the insurance companies, giving tips, going to speak. My God, we went to a restaurant one day. He came up and we did the show and went and had lunch and we met some listeners and he brought out his books and stuff and they had to close down this restaurant because I even forget what it was. There was something with the plumbing or something, and they wound up having to shut the place down. We're still in there with listeners after the doors had been locked in this restaurant, talking to people, and he stayed. He would have stayed for another 3 hours if he needed to, and it shows something about your character. But what's happening this morning? How was you?
I'm doing great, and thanks so much for the kind words. And I think that if we make a commitment as people to be as good as we can, I think it makes a difference in the world. I think if we really stop for a moment and say, how can we help our fellow man, and along the way, other things will come, I think we have a better place. I think when there's less criticism and vitriol and anger in the world, and there's more kindness and generosity for no other reason but to be good, I think it makes the world a better place. I think that everybody is starving for some positivity. I think everyone is really striving, even in the media world and the political world, for some positivity, for some, let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about how we can make our lives better rather than how we can tear everybody down. And I think that my commitment, and that comes from a great family upbringing, is that, you do unto others. And not only that, you try to be a role model of what you're trying to espouse. And I think if for all the hundreds and hundreds of hours that I have donated to help people, it is purely, out of the joy of making a difference in the world. I mean, the Panhandle has suffered $25 billion of losses, but more importantly, probably, $1 trillion of emotional harm. And, to not have people on your side when you don't understand your insurance policy, or the biggest asset you have, your house, is now, in despair, and it's affecting your emotional well-being, and you have to drive further and do other things which create stress, I think every person who can be a ray of sunshine through those clouds, I think, gives just kindness and joy, and it gives us some optimism that there are good people in the world that really care and that are trying to make a difference. And I think that, the more that we do this, the more that we spread that kind of energy, I think the better people we are, and I think we create more positivity by sending out that radiation of love and joy and help. And so for me, it's been something that I have really personally enjoyed. I think the people of the Panhandle are extraordinary people that have dealt with overwhelming odds and incredible frustration, and they are coming out truly 850 strong. And so I'm happy to be just a small part of that, of trying to empower and educate people and trying to help them to understand how they can take their lives back and make the lives for themselves and their family better.
I often wonder about the, one of the big things here is a local news story recently about the school system and about how this coming up school year, mental health is going to be a big deal. Now, by the way, your book is sitting on my desk at home, and every day I get home and I'm like, I gotta read this thing, and I get caught up in so much work and everything, and I get buried, and I'm dying to read your book. I did read part of the preface where you were talking about your when one of the storms blew in, what happened to you, your office, your employees, and you were going through that. And I thought that was really interesting. And I did get that far. But I want to ask you how, this is not hurricane specific, but we are in a world of the internet and or news and media. We consume, even if we don't even imagine or think about how much media we consume, it gets in our head because we're on our phones or we're on a computer or we're around a TV or radio, and we do hear a lot of negative stuff. It seems over and over and over again. From the perspective of being a motivational guy, how do you kind of squelch some of the negative stuff? Because if you listen to it, it can really run you down.
I completely agree with that analysis. I think that, you have to stay focused on what you can do to positively affect others. And to me, I just don't get drowned in the negativity. I try to stay away from it. There's a expression that I tell people, I say, stay away from the jellyfish. And they're like, well, what's that mean? And I say, well, all jellyfish do is sting. And if you stay away from the jellyfish, you won't get stung. And the concept is that you want to make sure that you get around positive people and that you avoid the kinds of things, the unnecessary negativity. I lecture all the time, not only to large groups and small groups, but to young teens. And, if a woman goes on to the internet and sees how much pressure there is, you can never be skinny enough, you can never be pretty enough, you can never have enough bling, you can never have enough this. All it does is saturate you with what you're not. And I think that there needs to be more of a push, a groundswell amongst many people to get people like me on the radio, on television, on the internet, to get the power people, to get me a radio show, to get me on the XM radio and those kinds of things, so that I can spread that word of positivity, and be able to share with people that there's a way of looking at life, that we all suffer tragedy. If you read the first 12 pages of my book, you'll think that life is great. I don't care what position you're in, because they're devastating, some things that happened to me. And I'll tell you that, if your mentality is that, listen, we're all going to suffer some challenges, but we have to focus on the positivity. We have to focus on what we have and not what we don't. We have to focus our family and our kids on the opportunities they have and not the opportunities they don't. If we can spend time emphasizing to our people what chances you have in the world and how the stuff that you do well should be reinforced and the stuff you don't do well should just be talked about, constructively analyzed, assessed, and then forgotten about. I thought that it was really neat if you watched the famous Federer-Djokovic tennis match, one of the greatest tennis matches of all time that occurred this weekend. And they said to Federer, well, how are you going to handle this devastating loss after 5 hours? And he said, I'm going to forget it as soon as I can. But he said, I now have to go back and be a dad and be a husband. And I look forward to that. And that mentality was so refreshing and so wonderful for such an incredible ambassador of the game. And what I try to do is I try to send out as much positive messaging and as much positive energy. And I try to show people that there is value in doing good for others. There is value. Maybe you don't get $1 back. Maybe you don't get everything. Maybe some people even take advantage of you. But that generosity carries the day, and people will talk about you fondly. And there's nothing more appreciative to me, nothing in the world, than to hear people like you say what you said in the intro, that you think that I have a positive impact on people, or that I've helped people, that you think that I, for no fee, for no ulterior motive, went out and tried to make a difference. And I think if more people thought that that was cool, if more people appreciated how great that was, if more people appreciated what kind of joy comes out of giving that kind of positivity, I think you'd see a greater groundswell. I think you'd see more things, and I think people would start to understand that, yeah, tragedy can visit us, but our mentality has got to be that we have love in our life, and we have to travel forward and be as positive as we can and take all the good things that happened in that day and just mushroom them. You know, so many people spend time, on negativity, and they inflate it, because they're self-conscious or insecure, just like everybody in the world is. But the mentality is you should give the same value to positivity. And I think if you do that, it changes the paradigm. For us, it changes the paradigm for the people around you. And then more people want to be good because they see the value in being good for no other reason but then to be good.
By the way, if you want to contact Scott Major Parúas, and the Storm Help Team off the air, it's his number is 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. I think it's hard for people to, I know for me personally, and, this is a personal thing too, it's hard to... It's hard to package everything in the way that you said. It's possible if you look at it the right way. I think there's a lot to learn from you on that, because here people, they have a tough time compartmentalizing. Okay, I have part of my home is damaged to the point where I can't live in it. So I'm living in a tent, or I'm living in a camper. There are so many people here that are either living in tents or campers, or they're living in their garage, or they're living in another structure. A lot of people are doing that. That's a drag in and of itself. So now you're dealing with the insurance company, and you're trying to go back and forth, and that's a deal. And so a lot of people have lost their businesses. Heard a stat this morning. I hadn't heard this since the storm happened, but in the city of Parker, every single building in the city metropolitan, or in the municipality of Parker, every single building and structure, business, house, whatever, has over 50% damage. Think about that. As every building in a town. So there's just a lot of things going on. Then you have the normal stuff of going to work and dealing with that stress, and normal, you got your kids' stuff. There's a lot happening, and that's why I pump you up so much, is so that people can drop it all, drop that part of their life in your lap. And you have graciously said, I'm up for the challenge. Brian Parúas and I are here. We have a major staff of people. So if you give us that, we will take that on, and we will get you absolutely 100% of the money that you're owed from the insurance company. That would be a huge stress relief.
Yeah, I think that it's a valid concern when you have, stress that occurs in your life. We all have it, and this is a traumatic tragedy, and everybody has serious and significant challenges. I'm not making light of the fact that people are overwhelmed. I'm merely saying that there's always a positive way to look at things. If you have your house destroyed, well, you still have your health and your life, and you can make it back. I remember when someone stole all the assets that I ever owned, and the mentality was you can give up and quit. Well, I said, well, I made a lot of money before. I can go back and make a lot of money again, and I did. And it wasn't because I wasn't cheated out of that, or it wasn't because that wasn't traumatic, or it wasn't because that I didn't suffer. It's that what I did was I focused my energies on what I had rather than what I didn't. That's not to say that I couldn't be concerned or upset or frustrated. But if I'm sideways because the fence in my house is broken, then I need to readjust my thinking. And remember, it's a fence. Now, do I think that the fence is a big deal if I'm trying to protect my property? Sure. Do I think it's unjust if the insurance company or somebody didn't pay for that? Of course it is. But I can't allow that to compromise the value of my life. We all have a short time on this earth. We need to value every moment of it. If we have kids, we need to value every moment of that. If we have a family, a wife, a spouse, we have to value every moment of that. And the second that you lose sight of that, under the guise of some situational crisis, I think you just do yourself a disservice. I think what happens is it's not that you don't have a right to be angry or upset, but, for example, anger is the most wasted emotion in the world. You're not happy. The person you're directing the anger to is not happy. You never gain anything out of it. You never feel good about it, about being angry. But the mentality is it takes away from the quality of your joy. Does that mean if somebody wrongs you that you shouldn't pay attention to that or you shouldn't point that out? Well, of course you should. But in times like this, especially when tragedy visits an entire area such as the Panhandle, I think we have to focus and come together and realize that we are good people, that we will respond, that we can have, goodness in our hearts and our soul, and that there are people around that are willing to do the kinds of things, for example, that I'm willing to do. I'll go talk to any group. I've already spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours talking to people who have called in on the phone that haven't hired me. They've asked me questions. They've asked me about other lawyers. They've asked me about how to deal with their lawyer or their vendor. I've had public adjusters by the dozens call me and ask me advice on their claims. I've had loads of people that call me up. I don't view that as some sort of, I'm wasting my time. I view it as I'm making a contribution, a positive contribution into this world that I think will make a difference for everyone. And I think if we all have that attitude, it just makes your life a little bit lighter.
Absolutely.
It just makes your perspective a little bit different.
Hold on one sec.
Trying to suck less and less every day.
Ooh, you suck.
More of The Kramer Show coming up next on NewsTalk at 101. Now live.
And now,
Broadcasting live.
We will broadcast
Live. And local in the morning. Right here in Panama City. This is Kramer in the Morning.
any man who has ever tried to fight him has never come back.
It's the truth. He's like a curse upon us.
NewsTalk at 101.
Scott Major with us this morning. Scott Major going to be here, our first guest on Live from the Atrium, which is next Friday. To get your ticket, you got to win one. You can do it on the show, and you can do it on the website, newstalk101.com. You'll see the logo for Live from the Atrium there on the website on the front page. Just go that, click on the little deal, and fill out this very short form. And we're going to pick up. I think I've got like 3 or 4 winners already from the website. Keep sending those forms in. Scott will be here, and one of the things I want to talk to you about live on that show. Let me preface this by saying I think it's important that since we're going to have a live audience, they can absolutely dictate the content of that show. And they're going to be here. They've gone through it. So if they want to get on the microphone and talk back and forth with you, that's absolutely they can do that. One of the things that I just felt like maybe people would want to hear is how to get your life buttoned up legally in the sense of, another storm. If another storm happens, what do you do? And that, you and I have, Scott, talked about a lot about insurance, but what about other things like getting a will? What to do with your assets? I mean, how to button up everything legally. That's a kind of a broad thing, but there's a lot involved.
Sure. So every person who, is over the age of 18 or has any assets of any kind and certainly has a family should make sure that they have certain things in place. And one is what we call estate planning or life planning, where you make sure that you have a will or a trust that is a legal document that allows for the appropriate transfer of your assets to another party. If you're a spouse, that allows for transfer for assets from one spouse to another. If you have children, that allows a trust to be set up so children can go up and still get the proper care with somebody administering a trust. And whether it is a will or a trust, and certainly they can call the number and I can give them education. We can actually do wills or trusts, or we can refer them to people. The concept is that every single person needs to have a will or a trust in place. The difference primarily is that wills need to be probated, meaning wills need to be approved by a court in order for them to be effectuated. So if I have a piece of paper called a will and I give all of my property to my wife, then generally speaking, in order for my wife to take full access to the property, she has to go to court and have a court say that that will is valid and executed and appropriate. Whereas a trust document, it's just a different type of will, for lack of a better word. A trust document allows a person to transfer what's called by operation of law, meaning that upon the death, you take the death certificate and you can immediately convert that property or transfer that bank account or do other things which would be most helpful to you. And those are critical things, and we could spend some time on a show, if you'd like, to talk about when somebody should have a will or a trust, or they could certainly call up. If you have children and they're under the age of 18, it is critical to have a trust in place so you make sure that that child gets continuing education, medical care, treatment, and have a home, a roof over their head for a period of time. And within this so-called trust document, you can also provide for care for others such as children.
Let's come back to that. Hold on one second.
On Panama City's information station, NewsTalk at 101. It isn't politically correct. It isn't politically correct. It's just correct. It's just correct. This is the Kramer Show on Panama City's information station, NewsTalk at 101.
7:34. Scott Major with us. Scott, we'll swing back around to probated wills or trust. We're getting some phone calls. 850-233-9988. 850-233-9988, the phone number. Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team. Let's go to Wayne. Wayne, you're up with Scott Major. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Hello, Scott. I was just contacted yesterday evening from the person who handles the insurance for my contractor, and he said the insurance company told him that they were sending or have sent my claim to appraisal, and I wanted to know what is the positive or the negative aspects of this.
Sure. So appraisal is a contract-based alternative. In other words, it has language in every one of your insurance policies that allows either party to elect a different way of resolving the case instead of going through court. And what you do is you go and you have a professional, say a contractor or a vendor, you have an appraiser, someone you assign that you think is an expert to represent your interests. They have an expert to represent their interests. And then they go out to your property and they try to reach an agreement. If they reach an agreement as to price, then your case is over unless there's some sort of coverage problem, and you get paid. What is the upside and downside? The upside is that appraisal is usually a shorter process because you're not going through extensive litigation. And usually you get your money quicker because you have a 60 or 90-day timeline in which this often occurs. And it's a fairly expeditious process. What's the downside? The downside is you have to pay your own appraiser however much it costs, number one. Number two, they rarely agree to your price because the appraiser for the insurance company, if they were going to agree to your price, they wouldn't need appraisal. They would just call you on the phone and say, your estimate's great. We don't need to spend money on appraisal. And so generally what happens is you get a much lower result. The insurance company also knows that it's not costing them really a lot of money. They don't have to spend money in attorney's fees and things like that that litigation would incur. And so as a result, it's a way for some of them to get out quickly with often a lesser award. If the two appraisers don't agree, if they disagree, if you have a $50,000 estimate and their appraisal says it's 25 and your guy says it's 50, then what happens is they assign what's called a referee. Either the two appraisers agree to referee or a court appoints a referee, which you pay for also. You split that payment. And then what happens is that referee decides, okay, I'm going to decide it's $27,000. It can be relatively arbitrary even, and then you're stuck with that and you can't get any more dollars than what the appraisal says. Why wouldn't an insurance company always do that? Well, with Category 5 storms, where the damage is fairly clear, it becomes very difficult sometimes if you don't have a roof on your house for someone to say that your roof shouldn't be repaired. Secondarily, if these appraisers engage in wrongful or negligent action, you can report those appraisers to the representative state boards, of their licensure, and get them sanctioned for, making malicious or negligent performance in their duties. So appraisal sometimes is a good procedure. I highly encourage, if you do have appraisal, that you get a very good and competent appraiser. That can be a contractor, but you generally want somebody who can communicate with the other side, who's educated and smart, who can defend their position really well, and has credentials. If you're not sure of which appraiser to handle, you can always call the 844-800-LAWS number, and we can give you some suggestions. Or you can use your local vendor if you feel confident that that local vendor is personable and can communicate effectively and support whatever their estimate is with data, science, and other things.
Is there any difference if I request the appraisal versus the insurance company requesting it, affecting if it can still have an attorney involved at a later point?
Well, no, there's no difference. And just remember that appraisal appraises only those items that are, quote, capable of appraisal. So it's not going to cover your contents claim. It's really talking about, like, coverage A structures. It's not talking about your ALE, because your ALE is not your additional living expenses. They're not subject to debate. You have receipts or you don't, and either they're covered or not. It's more for the principal items that are subject to the appraisal. Now, some appraisers will get together and agree to the entire loss, and you won't have a problem of having to do with that. But I always encourage, if you have an appraisal and it's not just for your coverage A, it's not just for your structure, that you always make sure you have a lawyer involved, because you may be able to continue the litigation afterward if they don't pay for the remainder of what you're owed. And those are good techniques to handle. If there's a question about whether you're even covered, let's say you're debating about, some sort of window system, and you may not have coverage for your windows, or the windows have to be replaced and you don't have upgrade or law and ordinance, then you may want to get a lawyer involved, because the insurance company may want to challenge the actual coverage that they don't even have to pay. And so you want to get involved with that early on and make sure you're protected. But it's never a bad thing to consult a lawyer and get some good intel. But appraisal is, a pick-em. I'm not a real fan of appraisal except in absolute clear cases, but it can be an effective tool. I always try, if they haven't paid the estimate, if I have valid grounds for the estimate that I've gotten from your, chosen vendor, I always file suit and then make them, if they want to elect appraisal afterward, well, they can, but I always make them spend some money so they understand that we have a valid claim and they need to prove why that claim is not valid. One last thing about appraisal. Under 627.7015 of the Florida statutes, an insurance company cannot elect appraisal. They cannot elect appraisal if they have not first sent you the required mediation requirement that is in the rules. So in other words, if they want to do an appraisal, they want to elect appraisal, they have to have first written you a letter and offered you the statutorily permitted mediation, that is, alternative dispute resolution, where you go in a room and try to negotiate. If they fail to do that, the law says they waive their right to seek appraisal, and you could go directly to litigation. So make sure, if there's ever an election of appraisal, make sure that they have done the proper, requirement of requesting or offering you mediation.
So in this particular case, should I wait for them to contact me, or should I call them and ask them, the insurance company, if information about the appraisal, or should I just
So if you've gotten a proper pre-suit, if you've gotten a document from them that offered you mediation, and then they elected appraisal after that, then your best solution is to contact a vendor, some expert that you would like, contractor, somebody that you trust, and then write to the insurance company and say, "Dear insurance company, the name of my appraiser is, John Smith, and please let me know as soon as possible when the appraisal will occur. Love and kisses, you."
But how does that affect that letter for mediation? Should they have already sent that Or what if
Yes,
they haven't
they have
sent
to
that?
send the letter. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. They have to say, if they haven't sent the letter of mediation, you have two options. You can say, I'm not going to appraisal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sue. I'm going to hire a lawyer and sue, which is what I would tell you to do. But if they have, then they meet the requirement. You would have gotten a letter in the mail, or by email. If you didn't get one of those, they're going to have to prove to you they got one. So your best solution is to contact a lawyer, perhaps file a lawsuit, especially since we're in month 9 now and they haven't paid you what you're owed, and then have them prove to you when they sent the mediation letter. That's what I would do if I were you.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope you have a great day, man. Be well.
Thank you, Wayne. By the way, the phone number to contact and get in touch with Scott Major is 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. If you want to get him to help you out in that 844-800-LAWS, and you can go to stormhelpteam.org, and you can meet him personally and say hello on Live from the Atrium next Friday. Let's go to, what is your name, Cliff? Cliff. Hi, Cliff.
Cliff, Scott, I had the misfortune of getting hung up with an out-of-town contractor, and as it stands right now, my particular lawyer has took on 5 clients, including myself, and is suing him. And I understand that there's several more in town that are also suing him. My question is, I feel like we're probably going to sue him into bankruptcy. And I was wondering if there's any way, I've heard some people talk about using the DBPR, if there's a way that this could be pushed into the criminal realm rather than the civil realm.
Well, the answer is if a vendor commits criminal acts, engages in theft, takes your money for fraudulent purposes, that's a crime, okay? And what usually when you make complaints with the Department of Professional Responsibility, or when you otherwise report that person to local authorities, they will conduct an investigation. And if you have sufficient proof, or if there are other people who have also been harmed, then they will heighten that investigation. And if there are criminal acts, they will absolutely take action. And I'll tell you, there is a serious desire in the state of Florida to crack down on unscrupulous vendors. And the CFO of Florida has made that clear, that you should be reporting people who are not doing what they should be doing so that they can gather sufficient information. So when they conduct investigations, they have all the information they have.
Right. Well, I'm using a civil lawyer that I keep on retainer all the time. And it seems like we've got a pretty slam dunk case as far as it goes civilly. But, crooks don't really put a whole lot of weight in anything civil. But they can always come up with money when it's time to go to jail. So somebody had told me that the DBPR can revoke licenses and stuff like that. Once you start getting into a crook's pocketbook, they have a tendency to do different, So that's what my question was.
The answer is yes. They have revocation rights. The Attorney General has the ability, as well as local law enforcement has the ability from the criminal side. If, for example, somebody's taken your money and not built or misused your money, under Chapter 812 of the Florida statutes, that's a crime called theft, and you can have both civil and criminal remedies for that theft. So the most important thing is to report it to your local authorities, the police, report it to the Department of, Professional Responsibility, and to report it to the local Better Business Bureaus and other organizations to which people can find reviews, and you would be amazed at what kind of results you'll get.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Have a great day. Hope it helps.
Cliff, thank you, man. Again, the phone number for Scott Major, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS, and stormhelpteam.org. So back to the Live from the Atrium and what we're going to talk about. What other things do people need to concentrate on getting themselves buttoned up legally, just for, peace of mind?
Sure. So every person should go and photograph their entire property. Every aspect of your property, all your famous, art and tractors and and lawnmowers and anything of value you want to take pictures of so that you have in your computer or stored somewhere in a safe place a sort of snapshot of what you have so that in the future, should it get destroyed, you have proof it's there. Another thing you can do is to make sure you have the proper supplies on hand. There are loads of things that people have problems with, and that is things like getting access to water, getting access to fuel. If you have a generator, making sure that generator's been started and that it is properly and appropriately working. Making sure if the oil needs to be changed on that generator, that it's been changed and it's fresh and it's not been sitting there for 2 or 3 years. You make sure that openings in your home or things which could create other problems are buttoned down or closed up or fixed so that no one can claim that the opening where water and other things got in was already there. There are certain types of preparation mechanisms in terms of the obvious things of batteries, supplies, and other types of things. But perhaps the most important thing is to make sure that your insurance policy, your existing insurance policy, covers all of the items that you have. Take your insurance policy and go to your agent. Write out on a piece of paper all the things that are in your house and around your house and which are contained in your house, and have your insurance agent in writing or otherwise tell you that, hey, this is what is covered. Every single thing in your home is covered. Or you need more coverage here, or you need less coverage there. And if they don't do that for you, then my recommendation is to get another insurance agent, because good ones will do that. And oftentimes insurance is sold sort of in bulk. They give cookie-cutter policies, and they just say, hey, here's a great policy, this is good for your home, and it's more of a cookie-cutter policy and not personalized to your individual needs. Maybe you have too much contents coverage or not enough. Maybe you don't have enough ALE, or maybe you have too much. But the concept is that you're making sure that you have sufficient coverage where you need it, and you're not paying for coverage where you don't.
Yeah, and that's can be a tricky thing. I mean, if you sit down with the insurance, I guess what's kind of scary is to hear you talk sometimes about how little the insurance company, when you sit down with them to create, a policy, how little they really talk to you about really what it is that you need. And in other words, they want to sell you, they want to get your business, so they don't adequately really insure you. I don't like to sit here and bash any particular company, but we've heard some real horror stories on that end. And, to be honest and fair, there have been some insurance companies who've done a phenomenal job with their insurance agents sitting down with people and really going over everything and being great. So, like any business, there's good, there's bad, but there does seem to be like, we want your business so bad, we're just going to tell you what on face value it is that you need, and regardless of whether you're adequately insured or not.
Most people didn't know and weren't aware that they needed to ask their insurance agent whether or not their home was covered in all respects. They just assumed that the agent had thought about all the parts of their property, and when they filled out this application, they thought that was sufficient. I just think it's important right now for every listener, business, personal, condo, homeowners, whatever it is, to make sure that you have had some discussion with your agent and they have certified or said to you, hey, everything here is covered. All the things you have on your list are covered. It's a very simple and easy thing to do. And if they can't get your coverage, you dial the 844-800-LAWS and we'll find you an agent who will sit down with you and go over all of these things. It's very important for people to do that because this is your biggest asset, and you need to get all of the dollars that you need in times of trouble like this.
Let's take a break. We'll come back with more Scott Major. Joe is on hold. Joe, you sit tight. We'll try to work another one in. 233-9988 to get on the air with Scott Major, who, by the way, will be here next Friday for Live from the Atrium.
You think it, he says it. More Kramer Show, next on NewsTalk 101.
Help team with us. We got 1 or 2 minutes here. Let's go to Joe. Joe, you're up with Scott Major. Good morning, sir.
Hi, how are you? One quick question. I'm going through a contract right now. It says in the contract that they require power of attorney. Does that sound... I mean, why would they want that?
They don't need a power of attorney. There's no situation in which they need a power of attorney. That is a vendor creating, something that is just not necessary. But sometimes they might want to use that if there's some legal doctrine or document that you want them to sign. Other than that, you would not need it.
So the attorney that I'm fixing to hire, they wouldn't require that for any reason?
You talking about an attorney or a contractor?
An attorney, sir, sorry.
Yeah. Well, an attorney sometimes wants a power of attorney because sometimes you'll have checks that'll be issued in both your name and theirs, and a power of attorney will allow them to execute on behalf of you so they can deposit the check into their trust account. So we oftentimes have those also in all of our documents because we don't want to have a delay when a check comes in and it has your name, perhaps your spouse's name, and then our name. We can immediately deposit it, whereas a bank otherwise might say, well, you have to wait. Then we have to send the check to you, you have to countersign it, and you have to send it back to us. So power of attorney for lawyers is very effective. Sometimes there's some legal documents that have to be signed that are consistent with that. But our powers of attorney are limited to that particular case and to the negotiation of instruments that are necessary for completing those items. But that's why power of attorney is needed.
Okay, see. All right, very informative. Thank you, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate it, man.
Thanks a lot for kind words.
Hey, by the way, to get in touch with Scott Major from Major Parúas and the Storm Help Team, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS, their website, stormhelpteam.org. And again, Scott Major is going to be our first guest and live from the atrium next Friday. And in order to get a ticket to be here and get your seat and win stuff and get the swag and all that fun stuff, you need to go to the website, ours, which is newstalk101.com. And in the tiles up at the top left, you'll see a little logo for Live from the Atrium. Just click that and fill out the little form, and then you're on your way. Scott, an incredible hour, and I'm really looking forward to next Friday. I think it will be really good, and I think you're going to be able to help a lot of people live on that show.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate all you're doing for the community. You be well, and I'll talk to you next week.
You the best, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Hour number 3 is coming up. A lot to cover. I want to talk about the mobile home situation in Parker that everybody is kind of wound up about locally. And I'm also going to, speaking of getting people wound up, I'm going to talk about the rally, the Trump rally from last night. Holy crap. Fireworks galore at that thing. We'll play some audio and get you caught up.
This is live at local morning radio. This is Kramer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.